Welcome to another edition of Pop Talks. My name's Patrick Sargent, CEO of Pop. We're a cloud-based chartered accounting firm and we work with startups and business owners to help them build their dream business. Today I'm going to be presenting on GST, so should you register for GST, what is GST and how it affects your business. So what is GST? GST is a tax, it's 10% and it's charged by the government and it pays for things like public schools, hospitals and roads. So it's a really important tax and charged at state level. Do you need to register for GST? Well, generally speaking, there's 3 times you need to register for GST. So if your annual turnover exceeds $75,000, you'll need to register for GST. If you're a not-for-profit organization, if your revenue exceeds $150,000, you'll need to register. Or if you're a taxi or a rideshare service, it doesn't matter about income, you have to register and report and pay GST. So if you meet any of these 3 conditions, when do you report for GST? GST is done on a quarterly basis, and the quarters July to September, October to December, January to March, April to June, and the due dates is normally 1 month after the end of the quarter. So you'll need to report and pay GST on the 28th of October, for instance, for the July to September quarter. Now, if you lodge for a registered tax agent like Pop, you get an extra month to lodge and pay, which really helps with your cash flow. So if you're in a payable position, definitely speak to your registered tax agent. So if your eligible expenses that have GST are higher than your income that has GST, you'll get a GST refund. So you'll get cash paid from the ATO to your bank. So best to lodge as soon as possible after the end of the quarter. And what that'll do, that'll really help with your cash flow. So definitely lodge as early as possible if you're in a GST refundable position. There's 2 types of ways to report for GST. So we've got a cash basis, so that's when you physically pay for goods or when you physically receive income. And then there's an accrual basis. Now, accrual basis is based on the invoice date. So it uses a mix of cash, so physical payments, but it uses the invoice dates. As an example, at the end of the quarter, you may have lots of income owed to you. If you're on an accrual basis, you might have to pay the GST before you physically receive the money. So it might be better to be on a cash basis. On the contrary, you might have lots of suppliers and you may owe a lot of money. You can claim the GST credits before you physically pay the suppliers. So 2 different types of methods. Best to speak to your trusted advisor about which one's best for you. You should track it through an accounting software. So this will track the GST on income, the GST on expenses, and make it really easy to report your GST and know exactly what your liability is or what's owed to you. So how's GST work? Well, let's do an example. Let's assume I'm registered for GST, I need to report GST. I invoice the client $1,000 plus GST, so on my invoice I'll have $1,000 plus the GST, which is 10%. Let's assume I have $400 in expenses that have GST. So the GST will be $40. That's all I have for the quarter. So $1,000 income, $400 expenses. My total GST is $100 in GST income, less my $40 in GST expenses. So I have a GST payable of $60. Now that needs to get paid to the ATO if you're registered on a quarterly basis. There's some different items that are GST free. These might include government fees, that could be ASIC fees, that could be fines, penalties. There's unprocessed things like raw food that are GST free. And you could be a doctor, for instance. Doctors are quite lucky, GST free for their income. So it changes across different professions as well. And there's different styles to reporting GST. So if you're a property developer, you may use things like a margin scheme. So that's GST in a nutshell. I hope you got some valuable insights into GST. Please click on the below link if you've got any questions. And yeah, make sure you speak to your trusted advisor about setting up your GST correctly and making sure you're getting the most out of your GST. We'd love to help you out. Thanks for listening.